So, so living out here in the desert and getting all sorts of opportunities to spend time, not listening to the TV, and, actually creating things with what I'm doing here. I get a lot of time to think about stuff, right? And one of the things that I think about a lot is that we got a lot of problems in the world, right? I mean, we've got a lot of problems in the world that are not being suitably addressed, right? And when we start to address the problems, well, that's how they get solved, right? Because when energy, I mean, like this was parts of a tree the other day, and now it's becoming part of a hugelkultur mountain, like this stuff, right? So this was something that wasn't working for somebody, right? And I'm making it useful by doing it in a different way. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that here we go. We've got a problem with criminals being held accountable for their actions against people. Like I just read on one of the local Facebook groups that there's somebody, they were retired folks and they'd saved up their money for a long time, and they finally were able to afford a little electric bicycle for the husband. Or well, I'm sure they both played with it, but I think it was mainly for him. Get out, get some fresh air. Well, so he, I mean, I laughed, but I mean, this isn't funny. He, so he went for a ride. I mean, he'd only been on it a few times. He's like, pretty happy. Well, he went down in a local parkway, and somebody decided that they wanted his little bicycle more than he did, and so they beat him up and they took it. But when they called the police were not able to do anything, because you can come in and file a report, but I mean, what are we really going to do? What are we really going to do? I mean, we can put 5 cops on somebody who doesn't have a driver's license, even if they didn't hurt anybody. But we can't put energy towards solving crime, assault, theft, rape. I mean, how much is happening in this world right now that shouldn't be happening if people were being held accountable for their actions? And I realized, I'm like, man, this is a huge, huge, huge problem. Oh my God, how do we solve this, right? And I realized that we solve it by just changing how we do things a little bit, right? I mean, if we have all sorts of officers available to make money for the community, in the form of fines and, basically, I mean, like I was talking to a young man who he was charged, I think it was almost $200 because his exhaust wasn't stock, right? His exhaust sounded different than it did from the factory. It wasn't obnoxious. I mean, he took me outside, and I mean, honestly, my truck was probably louder than his car, but because my truck is big, it's allowed to be noisier, right? Is that weird? That's kind of crazy to me. And if we start to look at all of the things, like, I mean, I'm sure everybody has their stories about how they felt bullied by the police, right? Or they've heard stories at least, right? They've seen the aggressions happen. Well, I realize that's what they're being told to do, right? And that's what people are supporting. So if people are supporting it and that's what they're being told to do, well, then that's what they're going to do, right? Because that's what makes sense. But if they were told to do different and they were only paid if they did different, well, then they'd probably do different. And so, I mean, it's not like I really don't think that these police officers are malicious in what they're doing. I mean, they might be looking like it sometimes, but you got to understand that sometimes they're going to have really bad days. You know, they're dealing with people at their worst all the time. And so that makes it difficult. That makes it difficult for you to hold your inner peace, especially when you're not being given those tools. I mean, you're being given the tools of a gun and a taser, maybe a big knife. Gosh, that's a tough little sucker, right? But if you keep at it, it will break. Wow, maybe is this thing dull as shit, or is that just toughness now? Anyway, wow. All right. Anyway, so the solution to that is simply adding training and parameters in which they can operate, right? I mean, because like if a police officer only was able to interact with you and either try to steal your money or your time in the form of incarceration, if you've harmed somebody with your actions and you're not being responsible for your actions, then that's when the police should be able to come in and say, hey, Mr. Irresponsible Person, we have charges filed against you because you did this. We have video proof. We have determined through investigation that the allegations are true and correct. And the judge has issued a warrant for your arrest. And then all this can happen really quickly. I mean, you know, the cops do it all the time. You know, I mean, you just call up and you say, this is the information I have. This is the problem, right? And then the judge says, yep, that sounds like a problem. And because of your previous honesty and good service to our community, I'm going to trust that I can issue a bench warrant or whatever kind of warrant, you know, for that guy's arrest because he's not being responsible. So then you'd go out and do whatever you got to do to bring that person into being responsible. But we say we don't have time for that, right? So a lot of times we're assuming that there's going to be a legitimate charge, and so we're arresting people without a warrant. So then that causes people to lose their jobs because their employer's like, hey, what the hell is up with you? I don't want you around, you troublemaker. How dare you not just obey? And, you know, what is this charge of resisting arrest? You know, I mean, that people get hit with that all the time. But the only time that charge should stick is if you're resisting a legitimate bench or a warranted arrest. You know, I mean, if you're just doing you, you know, you shouldn't have to agree to being kidnapped with no evidence and from somebody who's not going to be held accountable for filing false charges against you, right? Because that's what the officer's doing, is if you were not actually committing a crime, they are filing false charges, right? That sounds pretty serious. But, you know, I've had people file false charges on me, but because they were protected by the blue line, the whole thing just went away. When I called to find out about the case number, they said that case number doesn't exist. I said, bullshit, it doesn't exist. It's written right here on the fucking where their search documents. And they said, nope, that doesn't exist. And anyway, so where do we go from here? We just require accountability. Accountability for everybody. We shouldn't be having police officers work as revenue generators for a city and for insurance companies and all this kind of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that if a person isn't responsible or they want to protect their property, they should have insurance. But if you're driving around in your 1979 Volkswagen Bug, or whatever. And you are very, very careful. Because I don't believe accidents happen. I believe that not paying attention happens a lot, though. Right? And people are not paying attention a lot because they got really nice stereo systems and they got fucking, $1,000 cell phones, and you've got all these things that are distracting to them while they're driving. But they happen to drive a lot, right? Because they got to get from here to there and go here from point A to point B, and you got to have a nice car to do it, because, again, if you're late to work, your boss is going to fire you too. It's not just if you're a troublemaker with the law. You're going to have a problem with your employer if you're late, or if you're not dressed appropriately, if you haven't had access to a shower. So for all those things to happen, it requires that everybody have an apartment, because everybody needs an apartment to sleep in. And that's pretty expensive. And if you're homeless, that's a scary place to be, right? Because if you're homeless, holy shit. At least here in Yakima, the homeless people, they're afraid of being beaten up, raped, or killed at night. And that's during the summertime. In the wintertime, you got to wonder if you're going to wake up, because you may freeze to death. Right? Now, the cops will arrest you or fine you for leaving your dog outside in the cold, right? Or if you shoot a cat for trespassing on your property or whatever. But they allow city councils to let people freeze to death, while corporate buildings and even nonprofit entity buildings remain open or available, unoccupied, vacant. I know that some of these solutions sound simple, but when we reduce, where did that go? When we reduce the waste of our time in a society, we can focus on what's more important, right? And when we focus on what's important, that's what gets changed. And that's the only way change happens. That's the only way change happens, is when we do it. See, like, this was a branch. Now it's a cut branch, right? Looks like this needs to be sharpened, right? It's been a while since we've been clearing things out like that. So my solution to that, though, is I think what the pathway would be is to unincorporate a city or a county from the state that they're operating in, and then have local representatives, and they could be elected by the people, but they don't have any power over you unless you've created a victim. And there's been the due process of law that your innocence is what is assumed. If you're guilty by assumption, that's a direct violation of due process of law, and that's been happening for a long time. It's only become popular in the news media lately, when it's happening to people immigrating into the occupied territory of North America. Right? Because that's what they're doing. Is they're seeking out a better place, because the place they live in has become so dangerous that it's often not even safe to raise children. And if we wouldn't want to live in a dangerous place, that you can't raise your children with the expectations that they won't be turned into slaves, sex slaves for rich people, then I don't know what to say. I mean, but people should be able to move around on the planet. The problem that people are having with that is that the government is taking money from some people that they call citizens and giving it to people that they call illegal immigrants. But are they an illegal immigrant because they did something wrong? Or are they an illegal immigrant in the form that they just didn't ask somebody else's permission to move to where they felt that they were going to be safer and have a better chance of building a life? Because I think there's a difference. I mean, if a person's coming to steal from you, then they need to be held accountable for that. But if the person that's stealing from you is actually the government, and they're actually only doing it voluntarily, because they've admitted that taxation is voluntary. And because if you didn't own the product of your labor, you would be a slave, right? And so they've tricked people into believing that that they're bound by certain rules and stuff that only corporations should be bound to. So like, what's the real solution here? And the solution is just to redirect the fangs of the police, the fangs of enforcement, right? And require them to learn, be educated in human rights. I mean, I've had police officers pull me over, and they didn't know the laws that they were trying to push on me. And I mean, I've worn that costume before. I'm not an idiot. I've studied a lot more than what a lot of these, at least younger officers, have. These younger officers they're scrolling their Facebook and TikTok when they're not pulling you over for not having the right sticker on your car. They're accepting bribes from young, pretty women who don't want their insurance rates to go up, or their record to be affected by something that they've done. I saw a video just the other day where they had done like a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, where a officer had arrested a young lady. I think I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she was drunk and disorderly or something. And in the video, it shows her, and she says, "Hey, I'm down to F you," and he says, "Hey," he says, "Don't be saying that." And she's like, "What?" He's like, "Everything's being recorded right now. Don't say that." And then he turned off his camera, and then like an hour later or an hour and a half later, he had to call his like one of his partners and let him out of the back of the patrol car. He had accidentally locked him and the girl that was trying to get out of her ticket in the back of the patrol car after they had sex, right? And so I mean, it's not like these guys are infallible, right? I mean, they're young and dumb and full of cum. I mean, they're often stressed out because of what they're dealing with people not being at their best, and then they're not likely to be held accountable and even stand a chance of earning weeks of paid vacation if they have to murder somebody, if they have to defend their life against somebody resisting their arrest, which is often an unlawful arrest. It might be legal for the cop to make some assumptions and do certain actions, but it also needs to be that they're held accountable when what they did was unlawful to the person and in violation of the constitutional limitations that have been placed upon government. That's the other thing. Sometimes people I talk with, they say, "Oh, my Second Amendment, or my Fifth Amendment, or my." It's like, no, it's not yours. It is not yours. That is a right that is inalienable to you. The Constitution spells out these inalienable rights, and they make limitations that they place upon government, so that way they're not going to infringe on your rights. But I've had a sheriff pull me over, and while he was infringing on my rights, assuming my guilt, making an unlawful, well, they can ask for your ID, they can ask for these things, but you don't have to give it to them unless you've actually hurt somebody, right? But when I was educating him, he told me he didn't give a shit about the Supreme Court decisions, and but the Supreme Court is what dictates what is constitutional or not, right? And so what he was telling me, he doesn't give a shit about the Constitution or the professional, judges' views on where it's applicable in law enforcement. Nobody had complained. Nobody had complained about me. Yet, when they initiate a contact, they are becoming the complainer, the complainant. And if they're being paid to complain, that's a conflict of interest, right? I mean, they're like, oh, yep, I did my 12 complaints today. Whereas that's just nuts, right? I mean, they are making a ton of money off of us, yet our roads suck, right? They're killing innocent men in jail. That's another thing. How is our jail system the way that it is, and people are still being okay with it? People are being let out, likely to reoffend. It's pretty known that it's a reciprocal system. So anyway, yeah. So doing this stuff, you get to think about a lot, because I don't have radio going. I don't want to listen to what the culture's putting out. I want to think about what's going on in here. And that's what a lot of people are missing, though. They walk around with little earbuds that's constantly telling them what to think, how to think. The songs, the news, the talk shows, all this stuff. And none of it's bad. I mean, I listen to a lot of that stuff too. Because I know that I don't know everything, right? And if I don't know everything, then what I want to learn something about, I should listen to the people that know, right? Because that makes sense to me. And I was always told before that you got to listen to your teacher. Oh shit, that's not good for that. Listen to your teachers, because they know. But then I've learned later in life that sometimes those who don't know or can't do or don't do are the ones who are teaching. And so they may not even have as much information to share to you as somebody else might offer, right? And I mean, we live in the age of information, right? I mean, it's called the information age, right? I mean, we even have tools that can search for the information for you and present it in pretty simple, easy to follow format to gather the information. And then if you don't, or if you're unsure about part of it, you can say elaborate this part, or you could do your own search, and you could also compare it to things that you've like books, right? You could even compare it to books that maybe you own or that are still available in a library. And then you can get your information from lots of sources. And so what do we talk about now? We're talking one-sided, I'd rather just the world be in a better way than it is. But if it's not, we don't say something because, simple thoughts heard out loud can shift the course of humanity. And when we do, or when we think different, and we support with our money and our time and our energy differently, and we do things voluntarily instead of forcing people to do it, right? Because if I've got to force you to support my ideas, maybe they're just stupid ideas that shouldn't be supported. Maybe I haven't managed to provide a level of efficiency for what I want to do to make it reasonable that other people support it, right? And so then I need to either seek somebody who is smarter than I am in certain ways to help me to share an idea, and that's what lobbyists do, right? This is kind of a normal thing. It's just being used in a different way. So I'm just going to keep talking while I'm unloading my truck, because why not? If you're already here and you're already listening, you already hit that subscribe button, because that's what helps share these ideas that can either change the world or at least offend a lot of people, right? Because they're like, I have a brother's cousin's son that's a cop, and I just think he's fantastic. So there's an emotional connection to some people and these jobs. But I realized when I was a kid, I wanted to be that, And then when I wasn't a kid, and I realized what that is by doing it, I didn't have to do it for very long before I realized, I'm like, hey, this ain't for me. And these guys and girls that are doing it, they really seem like it is for them, and they don't want to hear a word I gotta say. So I guess it's time for me to leave. And so I left. It's like a brotherhood, though. So if you leave that brotherhood, well, you're a scoundrel. Even if you're the right one, even if you're the one operating morality, in morality rather than profit and ego. Putting away the old, making it good for the new, right? That's the goal around here. I'm turning desert wasteland into an oasis. And I'm going to try not to knock over the camera, but this has got to go this way. I shouldn't have said anything. Alright, so let's see if we can get this set back over here. That's a mess. Oh, damn. Alright, let's try this again here. Okay. We're not going to say that again. Luckily, we're almost done. And these tools, like the internet that we have right now, they're helping us to connect, are the tools in how we build a re-love-volution. We don't have to fire a shot. We just have to present better ideas. because violence isn't the answer unless you've got to act in self-defense, and then violence is the answer, and you should be really good at it. You should have a gun, or you should have pepper spray, or you should have a big knife. All right. Because I mean, I learned by the second day of kindergarten that the system that I was being sent to was not responsible for my safety, and I was getting picked on and poked and slapped and everything. I mean, the kid was creative in how he was bullying me, and I was like, holy crap, I mean, this is just not something I'm going to stick around for much longer. And then, so by the second day, I I'll tell you another story about that if you want to hear it about the first day, but anyways, the second day is when I decided, I'm like, hey, I'm going to flatten his face. So I flattened his face, and he never bothered me again. And I was like, oh, well, I was like, violence in the act of self-defense holds people accountable for their actions and solves problems. And I mean, now, if you know, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have flattened his face. I would have talked to him. I've been like, hey, dude, I'm not gonna say his name because it's not important. There's bullies everywhere. Little kids with poor parenting become bullies. I would ask him, I'm like, hey, dude, what's happening at home that makes you think you want to come in here and be messing with me, right? I mean, because I'm not messing with you, but you want to try to hurt me. So we have a problem with this, and if you keep doing this, I'm going to flatten your face. But let's solve this amicably. And you know, you want to play with the trucks over here? Because I'm playing with the trucks over here, right? But I didn't have those tools yet, so I flattened his face. But it worked, you know. I mean, and I've had to use my fists several times in this crazy world that we live in, because people are willing to be an aggressor against people that they think won't fight back. I mean, I'm pretty kind. I'm not trying to get in anybody's face. I'm not trying to be better than you, because you know what? I don't want to be a better you than you, right? Because it's already a big enough job for me to be me, for me to be thinking that I should try to be a better you. So that's not the way that works. All right, so that's what I got to say about that. But since we probably still got some video, I'm just gonna talk for a little bit longer. I don't even know. Am I in the picture? Maybe. Who knows? Who cares? My face isn't what is important, because I don't want to be your boss. I don't want you to have to recognize me and and salute me. I want you to be you. I want you to be a free, beautiful, blessed and beloved, independent and empowered child of God. That's what we all are, right? We all should be equal, and we should each be able to express our free will the way we want to. I believe so much in it that I've tattooed it across my hands. Right? So we got free will, right? Because my mom, she was mad. She's mad when I tattooed my hands because she didn't have any tattoos, and she really thinks that you shouldn't be doing that to your body. You know, like you shouldn't be marking up what I gave you, because I gave you perfection. I gave you a perfect body, and now you desecrated it. I said, no, I decorated it. I decorated it in a way that I know that can bring awareness to an idea that I think is really important. And a few months after I did this to my hands, my hand tattoos were on the front page of the local paper. And, well, my hands weren't, but the story went front page and back page. And I feel really blessed. Lex Talamo did a fantastic job after we had about a 3-hour interview, maybe 4 hours, something like that. And she put together a really, really nice story. And free will is our gift, you know. And I'm the freest guy that I know. And my middle name is Will. So I'm an expression of free will because I haven't always done that. You know, when I went in the military, I gave up my free will to be of service to this country, to the people, I thought. Well, after 9 years of providing service, I realized that I was working more for bankers and war profiteers, the people lobbying for actions to be done around the world. We are putting our boots on the ground in other people's countries, and we're not there to initiate action, right? But how long would you allow somebody to sit outside of your house and point guns at you before you did something? Right? It might just be 1 or 2 people that actually do something. You know, maybe other people are pretty tolerant. But once somebody does something, that initiates a conflict, right? And so our soldiers, you know, we're not ever firing in offense, but we're firing in defense, right? But if we're in their country, on their doorsteps, pushing bankers' ideas and government policy on them, who's the real problem, right? But we're being told that, well, this is for the best. All right, I guess we just have to ask, for the best for who? So anyway, yeah, if you like this, you know, go ahead and share it, because that's the way stuff happens. Is simple thoughts heard out loud can shift the course of humanity. And when we each individually start living our life aligned with voluntary cooperation with others, meaning that we don't support anything that we feel forced to, right? If there's fraud or coercion or force, that means that the idea maybe isn't something that people would voluntarily go along with. And if you won't voluntarily go along with it, is it a morale problem or a moral problem, or is it more of a morale problem? Right? I mean, people are sad, people are angry, people are depressed. You know, lots of people got PTSD, and let me tell you, some of the people with PTSD, they are a danger to themselves. And if you engage with them at the wrong way, you initiate contact and you violate their space, they're a danger to you too, right? But you should have just left them alone. And most people will just leave people alone. You know, like you wouldn't come and try to steal somebody's money or property because they didn't have a few $1,000s to give to an entity that said they better give it to them or they're going to steal it. You know, I mean, you wouldn't do that, but you're hiring code enforcers and state police or sheriffs and police that are willing to do that on your behalf. And then we complain about the homeless problem, but we haven't provided options that people can even recognize. You know, if you go out and camp in the forest rangers will arrest you if you've camped for longer than somebody somewhere said that you could. You know, if you set up your tent on the streets, the police will push you all over town. When you're getting pushed all over town, moving all of your things, it's really hard for you to even find a job or expect that your things will be there. If you go and do a job, when you come back, are your things still going to be there? Everything that you've acquired and you're struggling to maintain, is it even going to be there? So people just sit in their tent. And if you're just sitting in your tent and you've got $5 in your hand and somebody says, "Hey, do you want this this pill, this little blue pill?" Right? It'll make you feel really good for a little while. And so they do it. And it's killing people. It's killing a lot of people. And these are people that are trying to escape the reality that we've created around them. These are people. These are your kids. These are your parents. These are your cousins. These are people who are struggling, and they're not getting the help or the outlet that they need. But luckily, there is another way. And like out here, I mean, you know, you haven't even seen anybody else, right? I mean, you're only seeing me right now. And if you lived out here, like you lived like way over there, I wouldn't hardly ever see you. You know, maybe sometimes you would drive by and we wave, right? I mean, because like if you're stuck in the ditch out here, are you gonna call a tow truck for hundreds of dollars? Or are you gonna come up to the guy up here that's got a 4-wheel drive and a chunk of chain, you know, and we'll pull you out of the ditch. You know, I mean that's how locally things work naturally. We help each other out, and a lot of people, they volunteer their time every day, helping out organizations that um, aren't solving the problems that they're intending to solve. Like I was working at a youth outreach center, and they it would only let me give the homeless or like the kid basically living on the streets one pair of socks. And I'm like, hey, we got a whole room full of socks. let's give them a couple pair of socks, you know, because I mean it's rainy outside, you know, so I mean if their socks get wet, they could dry them and you know have more socks. And they said no, give them one pair of socks. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I was thinking about it and kind of after I've been working there for a while, and I realized that if that kid needs to come in every day to get a pair of socks, or every day to get a meal, or every day to uh, anything that they need to come to that center. They have to sign in, and that inflates the numbers of what they're actually serving. Whereas for me, I'd say, hey, you know, let's get you taken care of where you don't even be needing things, right? Let's get you taken care of where you feel comfortable and safe and secure and supported. And when people feel safe and secure and supported, they blossom and they do good things to help other people feel safe and secure and supported. So anyway, yeah, look up. You know, like today is the third Earth Day this year that I've been invited to, and so I was like, well, hey, that's cool, because last year there was only one, and I wish that there was more, because you know it's kind of important of how we treat our land. And, you know, I mean, like okay, so some people when they cut these trees down or they cut down branches off of a tree, you know, they hire somebody to come and do it for them, and they pay them hundreds of dollars to do what I've done in not much time, because you're not seeing the harvesting part, but you're seeing the use of it. But what they do is they pay the person to haul it all the way to the landfill, and then the landfill chops it all up into little pieces, and then they give it away, and I go pick that up and I bring it here and I throw it all over the place. But they're paying on every level to exist. Whereas what I've done here is I've just taken it from over there and I chopped it down, and then I came over here and I piled it up. And then there's a big pile of dirt right here. I don't think it's in the view of, of what you're experiencing in my reality. But as I sort the rocks out of this pile of dirt, the dirt gets piled on top of this. So this doesn't become a fire hazard. It becomes like a beaver dam. But the beaver dam isn't holding back like a lot of water. it's just increasing the surface area to be able to grow food on, and it makes it like a sponge. And it it takes a few years for it to start decomposing, but I plan on still being here in a few years, so that's what I'm planning for. And if I'm not, somebody else is, and if they know what I'm doing, they would see the benefits of it. So anyway, yeah, if we want to see real change, we just have to change what we do, and we change what we experience. So thanks for watching.